Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the 12 Talk podcast. Now, usually it'd be just me and Mitch, but I've kept Charlie on the screen anyway. He is our guest for tonight. This is Charlie Wilson. He is the NFL writer for the Daily Mirror and the Daily Express.
Correct.
Right there, I got it right. Brilliant. I have been mentioning a rival through a lot of things today, and I've had to really, I know, sorry. I've had to really sort of clean that up. But yeah, so we're going to go through today Charlie's draft prospects for the Seahawks. Obviously, we've got our own. We've discussed them. Mitch has got a few. I've got a few. We're then also going to talk about some mock drafts. So it's mock draft season. Why not? Charlie's got a full first round mock. He's got a Seahawks mock. And then I've got mine, what I've dubbed the Josh's Value mock. Before we go any further, I just want to I'd like to say thank you to everyone who's been tuning in, whether you've been listening, whether you've been watching. Please make sure you like, subscribe, hit that notification bell as well on YouTube. Or if you're listening via a podcast platform, do the exact same thing. We really appreciate it. And if you do like what we do and you want to give us a treat, by all means, buy us a coffee or a beer. We record late here in the UK, but if we do record with any of our American guests, they might be very early. So a coffee would be well needed. And for anyone who is admiring my lovely hoodie here, this was a custom job, and yes, it is the Boz. I know people have got strong feelings, but I thought it was a fantastic cult figure, and I would have 100% had a Boz haircut if I was around when he was. This is from Mugs NFL. You can find them on Twitter, also online at custom-by-mugs.com. They're absolutely fantastic. The customer service and the quality is just brilliant. Hit them up. But before we go any further, gentlemen, are you ready to get into this?
Absolutely.
Let's go. I'm very much looking forward to it. Draft season is it's fun, right? You know, last season for the Seahawks wasn't very fun, but now we can look forward to a new era in Seattle and potentially a whole new group of players coming to a team. So I'm looking forward to it, Josh.
Excellent. Right. Let's hit that theme music and then we'll get into it. And we're back. I'm not going to, rinse lyrical about that. I still love our theme tune. I can't help it.
That is a really good theme tune. I've seen some good ones. That might be up there. That is up there.
That is so that's Slim Genix. You can find him on SoundCloud. It is a slight bit of nepotism on my behalf because he is my brother. But when you turn around to your brother who knows a music producer and DJ and say, this is what I need, and he sends this to you in the first cut, you think it's got to be used. So yeah, thank you very much. I'll let him know. Hopefully he's watching. If not, I'll make sure I send him the clip. But here we go. Hot prospects is what the episode's called. Who are we picking? Who should we look after? Who should everyone look out for in Seahawks land? Charlie, you are our guest. This is for you to take the lead on. And then, by all means, Mitch and I will chime in with anyone that we think as well.
So, if you're asking me who the Seahawks should be targeting, is the best player that they can get, right? They have to see how the board falls to them in the first round. And in my opinion, they have to trade back. Not having that second round pick is huge, especially in this draft. I love the depth this year, especially in the trenches where Seahawks need the most help. Yep. So I'm trading back all day long, and I still think so. I'm trading back just to confirm in the later first round, and I still think the player who is the most ideal for them at 16 will probably be there in the mid-20s. So to answer your question, I'm going to trade back. I'm going to take the best lineman who I can get.
Oh, my guy, which actually leads in very well to a question that we received through our Discord from Ryan G. He just said, say if we have pick 16, but you, like me, trade back, I see so much value in this draft for the positions that we need that I always trade back. I have one trade partner that I go to every time in the Detroit Lions, because I think they're going to look to build off last season, and the higher they can get in the draft, the better. We can get a late first and a second from them. But he said, say you have pick 16, you're taking D-line or O-line versus Latu, Murphy versus, JPG, Powers Johnson or Powers Jackson, and or Fuaga or Fatani. I forgot to read for a second there. Cool. Yeah. So that answers the question. We're going to go lineman that first round. In that first round, obviously, I have your first round mock, which we'll be showing people later. But what prospects, if we're looking at D-line or O-line, would you want us to look at, Charlie?
I mean, on those 6 on the list, it's difficult. I don't think Fuaga's going to be there. I think he's going to be taken 10th by the Jets. I'd be very surprised if he falls below the Jets. Latu, I also think will probably be taken by then. I love him as an edge rusher. But I'm targeting 2 guys in particular, and that's Troy Fatanu, and who actually is not on my list, is a defensive tackle, who I think are the best 2 fits for Seattle late in the first round. And we obviously need help interior because we've got basically no interior offensive lineman apart from Oluolu. So we need as much help as we can get there. Fatanu is obviously a guy from Washington who played so well as a left tackle, but projects as a guard. He will play guard, no question about it. And obviously our new offensive line coach coached him. So I imagine Seahawks will be targeting him. But like you say, Josh, I've not mocked him to Seattle. I actually passed on him and drafted someone who's not on that list of 6 players.
I saw, and I was surprised with the list that was there. I mean, Latu for me is as a rugby man as well. His transition from playing rugby to American football, I find fantastic. Mitch and I, over the last couple of episodes and over Messenger and Discord and everything, have been desperately trying to find out what he did to his neck. Now, I can only imagine it's cervical spine, obviously the neck. I don't know if it's spinal cord or what's happened, but for him to be told to never play again, I can only assume it's spinal cord. Do you know anything, Charlie? Please enlighten us.
I don't know the injury exactly. That's
no one does.
All I do know is that there's a lot of talk about he retired, right? Like, are you retired? So as concerns about his love for the game. That's not. We spoke to someone in Washington who was on that staff. He didn't retire. He was told he probably can't play anymore, and then got second opinion. It's like, you can play, and he jumped at it. So it's not like he was like, you can't question his love for the game, or even listen, his injury was obviously quite significant if he was told to retire, right? But he's found a way back, and he looks every bit of a player, if not better, since that injury. And so I can't help you about what the injury was. All I can tell you was it doesn't seem to be affecting him at all. And Josh, you know a lot about necks than I do, about neck injury, should I say. It doesn't look to be affected. I don't want to not being horrible. You know.
So, well, it was my injury. Paralyzed myself with a spinal cord injury. That's why as soon as I saw this, when Mitch and I were going through Latu, and he highlighted that neck injury, I did such a deep dive online to try and find something, anything, and it just says neck. And you're thinking,
you hear the term broken neck a lot, right? But we heard that with DK, we've heard that with Latu, but they're not. It's not just like it's a bone and it breaks and it doesn't, right? It's like there's a lot of different injuries you can have. So I don't know any specifics, but he seems to pass every medical you can right now. So he seems to be okay. And I'm not a doctor, so I'll just go with what I'm told.
So the doctors have said he's fine to play. So that's the main thing then.
I think one of the things that helps Latu is that a lot of his success off the edge hasn't been built on being overly bendy or athletic. It's all technical ability and skill and motor. So even if he is slightly inhibited by stiffness in a couple of vertebrae, it clearly isn't stopping him right now being able to ply his trade and do it really well and secure a projection for a top half of the first round pick. So if he's passing medicals and he's performing like that just after that that injury and having 2 years like he did with so many sacks and TFLs, I don't think there's going to be a huge amount of concern, which is reflected with the projection, I think, in the first round.
Just to echo off that, Mitch. Sorry to interrupt, Josh. Like if you're a pass rusher and you're trying to learn how to pass rush, watch Leatu Latu. He is not athletic. Obviously, he's athletic, but he's not a pure athlete. He wins, like Mitch says, by pure technique and understanding of the game, and it's beautiful to watch. Like the way he rushes the passer is so refined and so skillful. Every step, every movement is calculated, and it's good to watch.
I would say my favorite thing from watching this tape was it was the movement of his feet, the placement of his feet to set the rest of his body and the mechanics to get around a tackle or past the guard. I thought was absolutely fantastic, and it excites me. I'm going to hate seeing him in another team's uniform, but I'm excited to see his career trajectory. Now, you said that you were going to look at O lineman. Mentioned that, and there's a D lineman that isn't on that list that was given to us by Ryan, but we'll get to that one later. So if that's going to be your first round, we're going to be looking at O line or D line. Is there anyone else that, say the Seahawks didn't go O line or D line, that you think we should look at?
That's me.
Yes, Charlie.
Yeah, so
just trying to pick your brains.
Yeah.
So
in the second, what you on here for?
In the second round, I have mocked the tight end, and I would not have done that last week. The combine is a reflection of that. They obviously need tight ends because again we have none. We just let Will Disley go. Colby and Noah Fant are free agents. I don't think they'll re-sign Noah Fant. Colby Parkinson maybe, but even if they do, they still need another tight end, maybe even two. So that's a position of need. Linebacker is a big one, a big position of need, which I do think they will address. There's one guy in the draft who Seahawks Twitter are pining for, and I agree. He's a good player, Junior Colson. And then safety, right? Safety, now we just let go of the two expensive leaders on the team.
Most expensive safety tandem in the NFL.
Yeah, who produce a little bit, but not as much as Seahawks Twitter. I mean, just to touch on that a little bit, Quandre Diggs, good safety, not worth the price. Jamal Adams, good safety, not worth the price. I don't know how you can disagree with the moves that the Seattle have made. I think they're good moves in my opinion. So to answer your question again, Josh, safety is a need.
I completely agree. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to be on garden leave at the moment, so my day is spent looking through Seahawks Twitter and YouTube videos and everything. I'm seeing the polarizing effect it's had with this safety group. Obviously, we've now seen Quandre Diggs, as you've mentioned as well, Adams, Disley, and we know Monet is now gone. Which, Mitch, I'll let you touch on sort of the cap implication of that very shortly as well. But I don't see why there's such a sort of discourse around the release of these safeties. The cap that they were commanding and the production they were giving, like Quandre, fair enough, wasn't ever present. Suspect tackling last year, which really ground my gears. But in coverage, you can't fault him. He was a leader. People liked him. Adams wanted to be that leader, but was never around and just became excellent English from me there. Became a bit of a liability sort of on social media and around the complex. And he just didn't justify that. I saw something from Mike Dugar earlier where there's this whole thing about the clear out that John Schneider's doing and the fact that it's partly him to blame. I agree. He is a part of it. But then a lot of these players that you see who got the big contracts were definitely peak guys. Adams, Diggs, and this isn't a slight on Diggs because I think he's a fantastic character. Disley, Monet is gone for a reason. But he's clearing these out because that's just a cap hit we can't keep on board for the production we're getting. Speaking about cap hit, so Mitch, you're our stats and figures guy. Anyone that watches or listens regularly will know this. So what are we looking at now with our available cap?
Sure. So I will do that. But you just mentioned about Twitter, or was it Mike Dugar talking about Adams being one of the worst John Schneider trades or be at a problem that he'd created. I actually think on the flip side of that, Quandre Diggs is one of the best value trades that John. So you've released 2 safeties in one day with the same problem of them taking up too much cap, but you've got one guy who's massively overachieved. Was it a 4th rounder we traded for Diggs to the
4th or
Lions?
5th. Yeah.
5th. There you go. Even better than I thought. Versus a guy we traded 2 firsts for and has played like 1.5 seasons worth of football for us. So it's a very dramatic contrast between the two. But yeah, referring to cap, we're now about 40 million. We're projected as having 40 million available to use going into free agent frenzy. So that's really well timed. But some of the numbers that have been banded around, and it's often a lot of it's clickbait anyway. They're trying to get you to click the article by giving you an inflated figure. I'm sure Charlie knows all about it with his industry. But there's been some numbers with Adams and with Monet that are slightly off, I think, and there's a few things to consider. So with Monet, it's widely said it's just under 6 million worth of cap relief, but he hasn't passed a medical in order to be removed from injured reserve. So there will be a compensation awarded to Monet. So possibly we'll see more like 4 mil, closer to 4 million than just under 6 with him. And regarding Adams, he finished the year on injured reserve. I think the last 3 games of the year, it could be 4, he was on injured reserve, and he has also yet to pass a medical. If he's to sign with another team this season and passes a medical there won't be any compensation due from us for cutting him because he's fit to play. But that isn't the case with Monet. So Adams should be 6 million, as we've cut him immediately to realise that 16 rather than the 16. Sorry, the 6 rather than the 16 that would have been post June if we'd cut him. We've taken that money now to free it for free agency, I think, which has been, I think, the approach from John with the roster to try and free up that money now rather than waiting for Monet to get better and pass a medical. Cut him now, take the compensation hit, get the money available now so we can compete for the names that we need to fill the roster pre-draft. That looks to be the sort of chain of sort of preparation and actions taken. So we're looking far better. 40 million is better than the -5 that it was 3-4 weeks ago. But there are obvious holes on our roster, and more than you can address with a single draft. So a lot's for us to talk about over the next few weeks with the free agency stuff and draft.
And then this is the thing, that all the mock drafts that we do at the moment are all pre-free agency, which I'm acutely aware of. The mock that I'll be showing later, you can listen to my thought process and the podcast and video about that tomorrow when it's released. But I will always caveat this until free agency starts, that this is pure speculation because we don't know who we're going to sign in free agency, what gaps in the roster are going to be filled. But this is where we have people like Charlie in the know, who is going to be able to tell us sort of where we should be looking anyway to pad out the roster with some really good talent. We've been through it ad nauseum now, and it's just nice to have another voice in here who's going to be able to tell us exactly what they think. One thing I wanted to ask you, Charlie, as well. Looking at these first rounds, you had O-line or D-line. Knowing what Mike Mac does with his defense and how he likes a versatile tool, if Cooper DeJean fell to us, would that be something you'd consider if you were a GM?
Would it be something if I was GM, knowing that Mike MacDonald is my head coach, yeah, I would consider it. I think he's gone before then. He is. I see a lot of people like, oh, is he a cornerback? Is he a safety? Like, we don't know where he can play all cornerback positions and all safety positions. Mm-hmm. There's some positions where versatility isn't good because it means you're a master of nothing and good at everything. That's not the case with Cooper DeJean. He can play every position in defensive back and play it well. And Mike MacDonald defense in particular, it predicates around disguise and who's lined up where and what can you do. Cooper DeJean is the perfect Mike MacDonald defensive back. So I would consider him. I don't think he'll be there. But if he drops, sure, why not? It's not our biggest need, not even close. Mm-hmm. But I think you have to consider it. Sure. Mm. When unicorn type players and by that I mean just rare. Like Kyle Hamilton was exactly like that.
Yeah.
When they fall, you just have to take them. And he's one of those. He's in that category, in my opinion.
I've seen where you've mocked him to as well, and it's yeah. Oh, it's scary to think about them.
On Cooper DeJean, I would say this as well, that with the way our roster is currently, you're looking at paying Witherspoon big money, and if you draft another defensive back, we may well end up in 4 or 5 years' time in a not quite Jamal Adams and Diggs situation production wise, because those two could be absolutely masterful on the back end and justify any money they're paid. But it would put us in another lopsided cap situation where we wish we had some money for the D line, or we wish we had money somewhere else. So it would make sense to offset that balance for the cap and go D line maybe, or O line, and spread that round where we're putting our first round picks.
That's kind of similar with the Bengals. So they right now are unsure whether to pay T. Higgins or not, because they've got Jamar Chase who's going to get that money. So it's like, how much money can you put into?
They've tagged him, haven't they?
They have,
tag him, yeah.
They have, but they probably are going to extend him. Is what the noise is. And if you do that, you're taking money away from another position. Does Seattle want to do that on defensive backs? Maybe. I don't think it's the best move personally.
I think it's getting to, and you see this now with all of the veteran safeties that are commanding a lot of cap that are being cut. I think teams are now looking at having some sort of parity across sort of salary, because you don't want to be paying a certain group an exponential amount, taking up so much of your salary cap that then you're left with the dregs with the rest. I think there needs to be a line in the sand where you go, look, these are the bandings. We can't overpay regardless of Pro Bowls, Super Bowls, personal accolades. This is what we need for the team. And you either like it or lump it. And I think there's going to be quite a difficult free agency period for some people. Joe asked on X, we talk about taking DeJean at 16th. That it theoretically that was a possibility. Obviously, Charlie has got his preference, and you'll see it in his mock later. And I've got a preference as well. We know Mitch has got a preference, and when Mitch releases his personal mock draft as well, I'm intrigued to see that one as well. So that was first round. So you said second round, Charlie. Who did you, for you trading back? What would you be looking at, and give us a couple of players that you'd possibly look at?
Okay, so if we're talking about taking a defensive lineman in the first round, is that what we're going off, or are we going off taking offensive lineman?
Offensive or defensive? You've named a couple, but
okay,
give us a couple of players if they're available.
So what else? Okay, so I have as mock to tight end. Do you want me to talk about that?
No, we'll save that.
Okay.
We'll go to that one later.
Got you.
So, yeah, Josh just means who would you look out for as a Seahawks fit prospect-wise in the second? If we were picking there, who would stand out to you? Who would you want the most if we were picking there?
Got you. So I think there's some edge players you can look at. There's also, in Mike MacDonald's defense, he wants a pure nose tackle. Michael Pierce on the Ravens is exactly that. He's just a guy who's going to two-gap. He's going to take up two gaps and just put his body in the way and say, try run through the A-gap, try it. Tavondre Sweat is a player who I think can do that perfectly in Seattle's defense. We've given you a little bit of pass rush upside as well, and to have that from nose is extremely rare. He's 370 pounds, so he won't play every snap. He might play 50% of the snaps, which lowers his value down. But I think nose is a position to look at. Defensive tackle, obviously, like we've just mentioned, there's a few guys in that group you've got to look out for. Edge, like I say, there's a lot of players I like who I think will go in the first. We're seeing Chop Robinson from Penn State, who is now seen as a first round pick. PFF have him as a late second round pick. I can't understand that for the life of me. But I have seen other thought of analysts who feel like he might go in the second round because of his length and his. People say he can't play against the run. I disagree. I think he can really well. Again, safety. Safety is probably value-wise where second round is really good. I love Tyler Nubin from Minnesota. I think he's a first-round safety. I would absolutely target him in the second round. Linebacker Junior Colson. Love him. Love his tape. Edgar and Cooper. bit of a will linebacker, speedy, gets around. Love his tape. There's a lot of Zach Zinter, the guard from Michigan. There's a lot of there's so much depth in the second round that it's hard to name one player.
If I'm naming one player in that second round that I think would be brilliant for us to pick up, say we've traded back out of the first round, or we've traded back to the back end of the first round and we picked up like a late second maybe. Cooper Beebe is a guy that I absolutely love from Kansas. He is a really versatile piece. He could play backup if Lucas misses the start of the season. He's a guy you can play there. He can play center. He can play guard. He's renowned for being a team leader as well, and he's barely given up any pressures and sacks in his career. And he's played a lot of games, so there's a huge amount of tape there, and he looks so polished and ready to go. If we were picking there and we took Beebe, I'd absolutely. I'd be fine with it. Funny thing about Beebe as well, his dad played offensive line and tight end, I think, as well. And his two brothers, one of them currently, I think Camden Beebe's currently on the Kansas roster, and his other brother didn't get in at Kansas because they have someone else playing the same position. So they nearly had 3 Beebes at Kansas, following on from his dad, who is now one of the administrators for the football team. So it's a real Kansas theme there. Maybe the Chiefs.
All getting lifts in together. Why not rideshare?
Yeah, absolutely. Take a minibus for all the Beebes.
He's one of those. He's like a pure left guard. Cooper Beebe. He's so dominant in the run game. He's big. He has some flaws. His kick step his footwork isn't very clean. Sometimes he kind of gets caught off balance. But he's one of those guys, Mitch, like you mentioned, he's just going to be good, maybe really good for a long time. And I think with that second round pick, we have to find someone, whoever it is in the second round, he has to be a starter, right? Mm-hmm. We all agree. BB is a starter.
Yeah, I think he represents great value for a late second if he's there and we're picking as well. Someone who's going to come in, fill an exact need, NFL ready, bit of versatility there. And that kind of family pedigree of playing the sport to a high level. His dad actually won in his first season playing offensive line for Kansas. He won All Pro honors for the best lineman in the country at college as well. In his first year, reverting from tight end. So they've had an impact on that college.
Some good stock, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, it's good stock, exactly. Yeah,
just very quickly as well. 3 BBs is a great band name. Personally, I just call them the BBs and get them all to grow a beard and try and sing as high pitched as possible.
Get them wearing tight trousers and doing funny dances.
Charlie, one thing we haven't mentioned as well, obviously, with you being a journalist and a lead NFL writer, you've actually got a draft guide coming out soon, haven't you?
Yeah, I do. It's going to be out sometime next week. I've just finished it today, so hopefully the graphics team will make it look nice and shiny. That's not really my job, I just do the writing. They do all the fancy work. So yeah, I finished that today. It's 12,000 words, 75 prospects in depth, and then 250 more where I think they will go with notes on them. Yeah, looking forward to it. It's been a long labor of work, but it's been good to write.
So, labor of love. I mean, Mitch has started his own draft guide, which he's determined to get done. It looked fantastic. I used it for a lot of my mocks. I know it's a work in progress, but that next season for definite, that is going to be out.
Yeah, for sure. I think my problem with my draft guide is I've tried to include so many prospects and try to make it so user friendly. I've tried to sort of create icons for traits and incorporate them in like the stat packs for each player, and so you can see at a glance what sort of quarterback they are, what kind of edge rusher they are, and it's very much a sort of conceptual framework for something that I think can work. But as I look at other people's guides, I think I'm pulling so much more information out of theirs. But again, like you said, you've gone in depth on 75 players that are going to make their name coming out of this draft. I've gone capture all the information for as many prospects that are going to get taken. There's a lot of guys on mine that I've done so much profiling into that are likely to be undrafted free agents.
Yes. So I made that mistake before. There was a tackle from Arizona State. I can't remember his name now. 2 years ago, and I wrote like 500 words in him. He didn't even. He never even got picked up by a team. So it's like I'm never doing this again. Like I'll just do 75. That's my limit, and I'll do notes on another 100 or so.
Well, as soon as your draft guide comes out, and we're going to lean on that knowledge very shortly for the rest of the rounds before we get onto our mocks. As soon as that comes out, feel free. You can tag us in that. We'll happily share that for you because we'll look upon that and we will use that when it comes to our draft party. So we'll be hosting that on our Discord as well. We'll be having a live watch, and we can all react in real time. But as we've gone through the first and second, Charlie, hit us with some of the other rounds and some of your favorite prospects for the Seahawks.
So the later rounds is. So we're talking rounds 4, 5, 6, 7, right? Okay, so I think if you're not going to draft a quarterback in the first 3, I think you have to look at quarterback. I think they're going to. The way John Schneider talks about not drafting a quarterback is like it's like some sort of illness that he has. Like he has to mention every interview that he's drafted 2 quarterbacks in 13 years. It's like a sickness. So he just has to get it out.
Between that, so that and mentioning that he was told at Green Bay to always draft a quarterback every single draft.
What's it? Ron Wolf? Is it? Yeah, he mentioned. Yeah, every time. So I think they have to draft a quarterback. I'm not in love with many of the late round quarterbacks. If I have to, I guess Joe Milton from Tennessee. But my gosh, his performance at the combine was like he looked 2 years away from being 2 years away. He looked like a fish out of water. I see it with the traits, but he's not ready. I've been really high on Spencer Rattler for a long time. To me, he's a second round draft pick. He might fall to the 4th or 5th, and if he does, go get him. He could be a starting quarterback. Even this year, his tape, the way he played with that offensive line, he looks like you know, when you're on Apple Music and you've not got the premium version yet, you've got to have a free trial on it. It's not as good. Like there's not as many things you can do and you can't skip. That's like Spencer Rattler with Patrick Mahomes. He's got aspects of it that are good, but he's not premium version yet. He's like a free trial Patrick Mahomes is Spencer Rattler. So I would take him every day, all day long in the 3rd or 4th round. After that,
on Spencer Rattler, before we move, I really don't want to like him because of the TV series where he looked like your typical like egotistical kid in college that you just would hate. And I think his experience throughout college, where he was behind Caleb Williams, he made all his mistakes at the Sooners. You know, he flashed all of the traits to be brilliant and had boneheaded moments where he'd back himself to do the impossible and lose his college games. You know, the games that he would often lose, he'd be replaced because he'd be making mistakes that he's done a lot of times. I think his kind of the knock-on effect of moving through different colleges and different situations based on him damaging his stock might really have knocked a lot of that ego off him. And he does seem to have improved more in his last couple of years of college than he did at any other point. So it might well be that he sort of realized he wasn't as close to being good enough as he thought he was when he entered college.
Yeah.
Does that ring true with you?
If you watch his interviews, Mitch, and I'm sure you probably have, it's like a different person. He comes across as such I played American football at a way lower level than college football. But I've played with a few quarterbacks in my life, and the ones you want to play for are the leaders and who have got an aura about them, the way they speak, the way they put the team on their back. Spencer Rattler has that. He didn't in Oklahoma. He was a bit of an idiot. He'll say it himself. He's grown up massively, and he's turned into a leader. And like you say, Mitch, he knows that he's probably on his last chance. And he took that in his stride. He went to a struggling team with a bad offensive line, like really bad. Never moaned about the poor protection that he had. Just kept grinding out, getting hit, get back up.
It was the Gamecocks he finished up at, wasn't it? South Carolina Gamecocks.
Yes, South Carolina Gamecocks. He was great. This past year, I think 68% completion behind the worst O-line in college. Like, that's really impressive. And to me, he's someone who you take a flyer on all day. Second rounder, for my opinion.
I agree. I got a lot of flack for this, but I rate him after the TV show, much like Mitch said. I think he didn't come across well. He came across like the spoilt brat, rich kid, entitled. I'm QB1. I'm going to go here. I'm going to be fantastic. But then he got humbled, and as we said in the comments, he's finally started to show some maturity now as well. And I think that is really going to alert a lot of the scouts when they have interviews with him, and they'll actually get that from him and think, actually, our perception is a few years old now, and you've actually grown up. So Rattler's one to watch. I'm with you on that. What else have you got for us, Charlie?
Safety wise, we've not taken one yet. So there's a kid at Oregon State called Keaton Oladipo who's just good at everything. And I've only watched a few of his games, but I can't find bad tape. Like he looks. What I like to do when I'm watching college football, like a random college football games, is just go in with no preconceived notions and just watch, and who jumps off the page, and it's him every single time. He just jumps up, making plays, getting around the field, hitting hard. He's predicted to be a 7th round pick. Like, he looks great. Like, he's the kind of player who can come in and at least have a Jarek Reed kind of role, right? Mm-hmm. Where he's going to make plays on special teams and potentially give you upside as a strong safety or free safety. And I guess one more off the top of that. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say Quandre Diggs 2.0 is what I call Jarek Reed. I think he just everything about him just screams Quandre, but I think Jarek Reed hits harder.
Yeah, slightly more athletic Jarek Reed as well. He's a bit sort of nippier and less stocky, a bit of more of a wiry build and a bit quicker. But he does throw himself around like a torpedo, like we've seen Diggs do for years. And I like that kind of commitment to that, like throwing himself in.
Come on, give us a couple more, Charlie, and then we'll go on to the mocks.
Okay, but so the kid, I can't remember his name, the tight end at Washington, who I've seen the 7th round. We've been mocked him quite a few times. Is it Westover?
Yes, Westover. That's
Jack
right.
Jack Westover.
Yeah.
He reminds me of Jacob Hollister, where he will give you very minimum as a blocker, but he will be a red zone threat even from year one, and he might be a free agent, undrafted free agent. He runs really smooth routes. He's quick. He knows how to he gets in and out of his breaks well. I like him as a late round fly, and I think he could give us, especially with Colby Parkinson, who's developed quite significantly as a blocker, he could be a perfect match with Colby Parkinson in those 2 tight end sets. I also like Malik Washington, the wide receiver from Virginia, I believe.
Yes, had a fantastic Shrine Bowl.
Yeah, that's the one. He's just one of those guys who, not the quickest, not the most athletic, but he finds the pockets. He knows how to run his routes, and he sits there. He'll take a hit. He's like a poor man's Tyler Lockett in a sense.
He's got nice hands as well. I thought some of the catches he
made
in the Shrine Bowl, I thought were fantastic. He just took it in stride. There was no way that was escaping his grip. Yeah, I'm a big fan of that as well.
Before we go to mocks, just like to point out that when Tyler Lockett's being paid $27 million, almost any wide receiver is a poor man's Tyler Lockett.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Anyway, that's a cheap version.
Before we get on to the mocks, so just one more comment that we didn't get to. I mean, Joe on X, he said we need so much help on the line on both sides. Would be insane not to go that way. And funny you mentioned that, Joe, because we have got the mocks. So this is Charlie's first round mock. Charlie, talk us through it, because we're going to try and keep this pod to under an hour. So you've got 20 minutes, my friend, to go through this, your Seahawks one, and then my one.
So the first thing I realised is that there's a mistake and Byron Murphy's in there twice. So I need to change that. Byron Murphy has been...
He's got a twin, hasn't he? I heard he's got a twin with the same name.
I copied and pasted this from what you said.
Must be 2 of them. That's my mistake. I apologise. It's one of many. I'm not going to lie. I'd have to do mocks quite a lot for work, so I do them all the time. Apologies, 12 Talk podcast listeners. Apologies, but obviously we're here for Seattle. We're Seahawks fans, so I'll talk about. He calls himself Johnny Newton, so I guess I'll call him Johnny. His name is Jazar Newton. He's just the best interior. Sorry, Josh.
I was going to say for anyone who is listening. By all means, come and watch the YouTube video. We've got the graphic up here, And this gives you Charlie's insight into where he thinks every prospect's going to go in that first round. Byron Newton's that good. Oh, Byron Newton? No, try again. Oh, God. Byron Murphy's that good that he's going twice. So we'll let him correct that, and we'll pop it on our socials for you.
The Texans will pick him, and Cardinals will go, no, we want him. We want him.
Well,
yeah,
so for this one, then, let's go on to your Seahawks side of it. So everyone's seen this first round. So anyone who's watching on YouTube can see that. I'll put the recording of this out as well straight after we've recorded this, or we've gone live. So you can go back, you can pause it, and by all means, interact with Charlie. You can see his X handle there is at Charlie Reach PLC. I'm sure he'd love to hear from you, abuse or not. Maybe not abuse. We try and keep that to a minimum.
Why not?
Yeah. Good northerner. All right. But let's go on to your Seahawks mock, because I thought this was fantastic.
Yeah, so Johnny Newton is the guy for me. If it took him at 16, that's fine. I would just rather get a second round pick, and I think they can. I think he probably will fall. He might not. Who knows? Like it's a month and a half away. But he's just a player who, he's big. He can play all three downs. He lives in the backfield. He just, like, every play you watch, it's like he wins. Single team, double team. He swerves his way through. It's like he plays with like slime on his body, and he just finds his way to get around his block. And like, how did you get through that block? But he does it, man. He does it. He shakes. He's explosive through the gap.
It's hilarious you said that, because when you said that, it's reminded me of Adama Traore, the football player for Wolverhampton. Well, you
coated in Vaseline.
He used to cover himself in Vaseline so people couldn't hold him, because he was that sort of big and physical. He'd beat you, and the only way you could stop him was holding on to him. So he'd grease up before the games. Similar to Johnny Newton in that respect. You don't stop him. He wins every time. I agree.
And it's just. And it's not that he wins with speed as well. He has technique. The way he hand fights is really impressive, especially for the interior. Like, his technique alone, even if he wasn't explosive, which he is, his get off is fantastic. It would be, wow, okay, he's a prospect. He reminds me of Ed Oliver from the Buffalo Bills, who was compared to Aaron Donald quite a lot. Johnny Newton is not Aaron Donald because no one is. But yeah, he could be Ed Oliver. He could be like not close to Aaron Donald, but the same kind of player where he's just going to be a game wrecker on the defensive line. And when is the last time that Seahawks have had a player on the defensive line who you have to account for and be like, how do we stop this guy? How do we stop number 4? Because Newton is that guy.
I'm happy with that.
I agree. The last player that we had that was like that was probably Michael Bennett, where we put him in situations to win because he was such a handful, move him around the line and make the teams have to account for him at different points and with different personnel constantly. That's the kind of player we're talking about with Johnny Newton for me.
And just to clarify for anyone that's going to listen to this, so our pick 16, Charlie traded with the Eagles to get 22 and then pick 50. So who do we have at 50, correct, Charlie?
So before the combine, I had a third round grade on Theo Johnson, and I thought, yeah, I'm way higher than other people. I've seen him in the 5th round, 6th round, 4th round. But watching his combine, good Lord, he is not just a freak of an athlete. He is like one of the best athletes at tight end position we've seen in the last decade. He is quick. He's 6'6". He jumps out of the building. I think he's had the highest broad jump and vertical jump at the time position has seen in like 20 years. And I went back and watched his tape, and it shows up. He had 7 touchdowns on like 350 yards because Penn State's offense wasn't very good passing the ball. But watching him score touchdowns, like he's just a red zone monster. As a blocker, he has work to do, but he's going to be a touchdown machine in the league, and I think he might even go earlier than this. He's a player who I think we have to consider. It's not the biggest position of need. We need offensive line more at this point, but if he's there, I do think that they'll consider him. And the big reason why is I think they're going to build an offense similar to the Ravens, where you've got Mark Andrews as that move tight end, and Theo Johnson can be in that role almost to a T.
Nice. And then explain the next sort of the trade up for us and how you got there.
So I think around this point is where Edgar and Cooper will go, who's a linebacker from Texas A&M, I believe.
Yeah, correct.
Yep. And the only other linebacker who I think is worth taking around this point will be Junior Colson, the Mike Backer from Michigan. And he's going to be a guy who the Seahawks love. Flies around the field, obviously played Mike MacDonald's defense for Michigan. He does everything well. He's great in coverage. He's fast. He's 6'3", he's 250. Doesn't look it, but he's big guy. He's just technically sound. The only thing I don't like about his game is he plays linebacker like, how do I put it? So I coach some first years at university, and when you teach them how to shed blocks in training, they'll be great. You know, they'll put their hands on each bit, will shed a block. When it gets to a game, all I do is just run at offensive linemen and try to knock them off their feet. Junior Colson kind of does that, where he just kind of, I'm stronger than you, I'm going to push you out of the way. Well, you can't really do that in the NFL. But his aggression, his his build will allow him to make plays all over the field. And I have no concern about him being a very, very good linebacker. And at this point in the draft, I think it's worth trading up for. Maybe give up their 4th round pick all day.
I'm with you. I'm a big Colson fan, so yeah, 100% on that one. And then you addressed our O-line.
Yes. So obviously, when you get to, at this point of the draft, if this is how it goes, a lot of Seahawks fans will be nervous. It's a 3rd round pick. We've not got an interior lineman, and rightly so. And this is in the hope that Zach Zinter falls to this point because he could go in a second. He's just a real technically sound guard. You can plug him in, and I don't think he'll ever be all Pro Bowl. I just think he'll be really sound technically, a sort of Damian Lewis level guard. And I think for the draft, for a 3rd round draft pick, for the money he'll be paid, I think it is well worth it. And he's a plug and play starter, so I think you've got to take him.
Yeah, and then we've got the next 3, which you've already alluded to.
Yeah, apologies. I've already spoke about these.
I thought I was blowing his load before we get to it, but no, I think you explained those perfectly. Washington, we went through that. Fantastic option there, especially when we're going to look to beef up our wide receiver room. We don't know what's going to happen with Lockett. Will it be restructured? I don't think they'll release him. I think there might be a restructure, but then you'll need to start building up behind him. Oladipo, as you said, Oregon State, he's a great shout there. And then Jack Westover. My only apprehension with Westover, and I've looked at him throughout a lot of my mocks, is I think he'll be a UDFA purely because he wasn't used a lot in Grubb system. So people won't have the tape on him. They'll be able to see the physicals, the testing at pro days and whatnot, but I don't think that's going to be enough to get him into the 7th. Apart from that, I love that as a mock for the Seahawks, mate. You can tell you're a professional at this.
my thing, thank you. My thing with Westover is I was trying to find other tight ends around the listed 6th and 7th rounds, and I don't like any of them. Like, they're all just okay.
Don't you spoil my mock, Mitch.
I couldn't really find a tight end that I think there's some good blocking tight ends where okay, sure. But I think Seahawks are going to want another red zone threat, especially if Tyler Lockett, he will retire or leave Seahawks in a few years. They have to look for another touchdown scorer, and Westover has the potential to grow into that role.
And then we had sort of one question come up again from one of our regular viewers, listeners, and members of the Discord. Just talking about the tight ends that you've drafted 2. Spoiler, I have 2 as well. Just saying, it's the thought on this that we don't bring back our current tight ends.
Yes, Noah Fant is going to cost a lot of money. Mm-hmm. You look, I think Noah Fant might get $12 million a year. I wouldn't pay that personally. I like Noah Fant, and I think you can probably in Grubb system, should I say, he will be a lot better. I imagine. I don't think he's worth $12 million. Colby Parkinson will probably get half of that. I absolutely would pay that. His upside as a blocker really impressed me because he was not a good blocker when he got into the league. No. He wasn't a clean blocker, should I say. He's impressed, especially in the open field. He's quick, good hands. I think Colby Parkinson is worth $6 million a year all day long. So I would pay Colby, but even if you do pay Colby, you still need 2 more tight ends.
Agreed. And this brings me quite nicely onto mine. Now, I just want to caveat again, I did this on Mock Draft Database. The picks won't be as realistic as Charlie's, but using a draft simulator, you take what you give him. So if we're looking at this, so much like Charlie, I'm a big fan of trading back. I think there's so much value and you need that second round pick. And as I said, my main partner, whenever I do these, is the Lions, because I think they're going to look to get some premium talent to build off their success this year. So I traded my 16th, the 29th, and 61. At 29, and this, I don't think this will happen in any realistic environment, but I took Brock Bowers because he was sat there, and I could have gone really hyper realistic, but if a player like that is sat there at that pick, you take him, you run to the podium and you say, I'll have it. That is just a weapon that can be used in Grub system. And then straight after at 61, Junior Colson. He is, for me, he's my consensus. He's my preferred linebacker. Now, obviously, I know there are others that we've discussed as well that showed out of the combine, but I think Colson in this system with Mike Mac will just excel. And then the next one, you'll have to forgive me because I don't know how many rows I put in it, but it's at 78. I picked Rook Orororo. Is that right?
Hang on,
that's
quite good.
Bosh, there we go. I'm getting it from Clemson, just to put that hole in the D line.
I think is it not a horo?
No, well, on the combine they corrected someone and said it's actually a row, and I remarked that it sounded a lot like a junkyard dog. But yeah, no, apparently it is a row. So,
and if we get a junkyard dog on our D line to come into that rotation, if we can re-sign Big Cat, I think Draymond Jones, Mike Mack will look at him and think, I can use you. Keep Reed as well. As long as he's doing what he's doing, I'd be happy with that. Plug a row in there as well on that rotation. And I think that first year, you'll just sort of see him start to creep in, get used to the nuances of going against an NFL O-line, and then the production will start coming. And then at pick 81, I addressed tackle. And I went, and I'd like to thank Mitch for this because I've been pronouncing it wrong for so long. It's Kieran Amagaji, the tackle from Yale. He was sat there.
Is that how you would pronounce it, Charlie? Just checking. I was certain it was Amagaji or Amigaji.
Correct. Amagaji is I saw an interview with him, and that is correct.
Perfect. But again, perfect. Projects he can play right and left tackle, plugs those holes. And then when I got beyond this pick and I got to pick 119, I had 2 players that I really wanted. They were both sat there. I had James Williams, the safety linebacker cornerback from the U, who Mitch and I have spoken about before, who I think will be a fantastic tool. And as Charlie said, Mike Mack's defense is all about disguise. You won't know where he's actually going to be lining up. And then my next one was Sione Vaki. And it was a coin toss between these two. On the draft poll I do tomorrow, you'll hear all about it. I probably spent a good 30 seconds deliberating. But luckily for me, when it got to pick 151, the Bills came in and said, let's do a trade. So I went, okay, I'll get some more draft capital. They traded 159 and 202 to me. And I thought, Vaki is gone. That is my other safety, who I think will be a development special team and then come into the team. But he was still sat there, and I could not take him. I think he's going to be such a fantastic player, sort of going through all of this. And he's something that we spoke about highly on the pod, and looking forward to see his development. And he just brings all these intangibles. But such a sparse safety room as well. I thought it's something that I needed to be addressed. My next one, I had a toss-up between, I can't remember who the old lineman was, from Michigan, and Brandon Coleman. And I went with Coleman. For anyone who doesn't know, Coleman was a team captain at TCU. He had 11 starts. He had 7 at left tackle, 4 at left guard last year. And he allowed 1 sack in 723 snaps. Now, that is the type of versatility I want on our O-line. If we can plug him in at tackle, but he's also more than competent at guard, that is perfect based on our injury concerns. And the next one is one that Mitch loves. It's a tight end that I found in the later rounds, AJ Barner. Not the flashiest of players, but I will take he's 22. He's not 22 at the moment. So he had 22 receptions last year, only 249 yards, but that's still an average of 11.3. He only had 1 touchdown. But for a man that has got the potential, can play a fantastic blocking game as well, I'll take that, because I think we're probably going to sign one of our tight ends back in free agency. I personally would like to see Parkinson, because, as you said, Charlie, I think his development has just skyrocketed since we signed him, since we drafted him from Stanford. But yeah, I've picked Barner there. And then my final pick, 233, a gentleman that I'll admit the name intrigued me to start with. And then I saw his combine and I was impressed. Really impressed by his just the physical traits that he showed that will be easy for a coach to develop. And that's the thing that our coaching team are really focusing on, the teaching element, which is what we've lacked for the last couple of seasons. So I've gone for Jalix Hunt, or maybe Jalix Hunt. The edge there you go, from Houston Baptist. Late, it's the last pick for us in the draft. You can have him on the practice squad, you can have him on special teams, let him develop, and then let him just come along there. But there you go. That was my value mock. Go on, boys, very quickly. What do you think? Go on, Charlie, I'll start with you, and then I'll wait for Mitch's character assassination.
Solid. You addressed all the needs. I think some of the late round players are just, okay. Wouldn't really excite me. But Vaki is a player who can provide starting upside. The others, I'm not so sure. But yeah, as long as we address the needs and you don't reach too hard, which you haven't, I'm fine with that. They have to come out of this draft with 3 or 4 starting caliber players, and I think you did that in your draft, so that's all good.
I'll take it. Mitch, go on. 1 minute. Go for it.
1 minute to break it down. I'll quickly touch on AJ Barner, because he's someone I really like. He's a guy they relied on a lot in their run game, which obviously Michigan they did it so well that they won him a national championship. When they did target him, he was he was productive with you mentioned over 10 yards on average when targeted. And I think he was underutilized in a run-heavy scheme. We know he could come in and aid our run game. And we know we've got a running back one who likes to bounce outside. So that immediately is a nice support for his game. And you never know how good his ceiling could be on his receiving game, because it's not been tapped into. There's no tape on that. There's untold upside with AJ Barner that late. And when you're picking a tight end that late with that frame, the absolute bottom line for him is you've got your inline tight end who's going to solidify the end of that line, be a brilliant blocker, and you can develop him into something else, and you're not going to be paying him for 5 years or 4 years because you've taken him so late. If we have to take multiple tight ends, he represents superb value. I'm a big fan of Barner.
And with that,
go on, sorry.
I was going to say, we're getting to the hour mark. We want to keep it under an hour. Charlie, before we go, tell people where they can find you, when your draft guide's coming out, and then we'll make sure we share everything.
No, good, yeah, appreciate it, guys. So Charlie Rich PLC on Twitter. I work for Daily Mirror. Actually, it's for the US team. So the Daily Mirror in the UK have now expanded into the US. That's a team I work for. Nice. So I'm the NFL writer. All my things you can find on Twitter. All my stories. My draft guide will be released next week, Monday or Tuesday. Looking forward to that, and then preparing for the draft.
Perfect. Well, Charlie, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. For everyone that's tuned in, who's watched, who's commented, thank you so much. Don't forget, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, all that good stuff. You can find us on pretty much every source of social media. And until next time, I'm just going to say, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.